Hello, and welcome to Esoterica and Nonsense, a podcast where we discuss myths, legends, folktales, fairy tales, supernatural phenomenon, and religions from around the world. I am your host, Annabelle Pepperbell, Dr. Pepper, professor of bitchcraft and bitchery, interdimensional fire guava of gargantuan proportions, and I'm sitting here on a beautiful early afternoon, and I am recording this just a couple of days before my birthday, but I am releasing this episode on March 25th, which is my actual birthday. Yes, I will be turning 30 years old. It is also a full moon. It is also a penumbral lunar eclipse, and it is also the day of Holi. For my birthday, it would make me so happy if you called one of your closest friends and you told them that you love them. It would make me so happy if you did a random act of kindness for a stranger. It would make me so happy if you quit your job that you hate, or you broke up with a person that is just not giving you good vibes. It would make me so happy for my birthday if you took a chance on yourself and just had the most fun. That is what I want for my birthday. And I would love for there to be a ceasefire. I would love for it if we as the human race could start dismantling violence as a means for resolution. I don't know if I'm asking you too much. I don't feel like I am. That's what I want for my birthday, so that's what I'm asking for. There's a beautiful breeze outside. There's an orange tree right outside my window, and then there's a bigger tree that I don't know what kind it is, and maybe you can hear it right now on the track. But happy Aries season, you guys. Aries season is the best. Okay, so where are we right now? Right now, we're on part 3 of the 1001 Nights. If you haven't listened to part 1, if you haven't listened to part 2, you should fucking do that right now, because I'm telling you, you are missing out on so much intrigue and information. And I'm going to do the most general recap of where we are right now. There's a woman who just married the king. She's going to die. She's going to be beheaded in the morning. So what does she do? She tells the best stories the king has ever heard, and she's coming out with stories of intrigue, of cheating, of jinn, of ifrits, of sorcerers. She's pulling out the stops right now. She's telling the best stories. And so right now, we are deep into a story. We are deep into a rabbit hole of stories that have just led to gateways and gateways and gateways. But in a nutshell, what has happened so far in the story she's telling the king? The story of the porter and the 3 women. This porter was hired by a woman. He bought all these incredible things from the market. He went back to this woman's house, and there she had 2 other sisters. They were the most beautiful women he had ever seen. He's hanging out with them. He's getting wasted with them. They tell them the names of their pussies, which are the best names ever. Highlight, husked sesame. And as the night continues, 3 dervishes show up. 3 men who look to be priests of some kind, shaven beards, all missing a right eye. Then later in the night, the caliph shows up with his vizier. They're undercover as merchants, just in the city, just having a look around, seeing everything's in order, just undercover recon work with the peasants. They end up showing up at the house. And so now we have all these men at the house. They can't believe how beautiful these women are. And the women tell them that they can all come over as long as they don't fucking run their mouths and ask questions about things that don't concern them. But of course, what happens? In the middle of the night, the three sisters get up and they do some crazy ass ritual. They bring in 2 dogs and they start whipping the dogs, and then after, like, crying and hugging the dogs. Like, it's fucking weird. Obviously the men are very freaked out. Then the sisters get up and, like, the 2 younger ones fall on the floor and they take off their robes so they're naked, and on their back they have all these scars like they had been beaten. And the men are, like, extra freaked out. And so of course the men are like, I think we should ask, like, I don't know, like, I really need to know. So the men ask the women, like, what the fuck are you doing? What is this freaky ass ritual? And so the women summon their slaves, and out of a closet come 7 slaves holding swords, and they all are about to fucking decapitate the men for speaking out of turn because they're fucking running their mouth and asking about things that don't concern them. That was the fucking rule. And then the eldest sister, the most beautiful sister, decides to show the men mercy. So she tells them that if they're honest with her and they tell them their life story, she will let them all leave one at a time. So the first 2 dervishes, the first 2 men who had shaven beards and missing right eyes, have told their story. And now we are going to hear the story of the 3rd dervish. So the lady looks to the 3rd dervish and she says, all right, let's hear your story. And he begins. He explains that the first 2 dervishes were victims of fate. However, he was solely responsible for his ill fate. The 3rd dervish was the son of a king, and as he grew older, he too became king after his father had died. He was a fair king, and he treated his subjects well. I mean, that's what they all say, right? But anyway, moving on. His city was on the shore of a broad sea with islands scattered all around. He loved to sail. That was his shit. He loved sailing. And he had 50 merchant ships, 50 recreational sailboats, and 150 warships. And one of his favorite things to do was to take out one of his ships and sail around the islands. I mean, hello. Wouldn't we all like to do that? That sounds like a fucking dream. So one day he decided to go on a sailing adventure to the islands. And so he took 10 ships with him with provisions for 1 month. And the plan was literally just to island hop. Ugh, hello. Sign me up. So 20 days into the journey, a crosswind blew against them, and the sea became tumultuous. It became rough. It became dark, and it was storming all night long. They were plunged into darkness. Throughout the night, the king feared for his life. He was trembling in his boots. His panties were in a knot, but he kept saying his prayers to Allah and praying that he would survive. So eventually, as day broke, the sky cleared and the sea cleared. And they found themselves very close to an island. So they put down their anchor and they landed. And they cooked themselves a breakfast and they rested for 2 days on this beautiful island. Dreamboat, literally. This is a fucking dreamboat. So then they set out for another 20 days where they encountered another storm. The storm really fucked them up, but again, the next morning, day broke, the sky cleared, and the sea cleared. However, after this storm, the ship captain did not recognize where they were anymore, and so he told the lookout to climb into the crow's nest and to scan the sea. The lookout climbs all the way up into the crow's nest, and he looks out, and he yells down that on one side, he sees a bunch of fish floating on the surface of the water. And then in the distance, he sees a giant shape changing between the color black and the color white. And at this, the captain loses his shit. The captain starts to freak out. He throws his turban on the deck and he starts screaming. He's like, we're fucking dead. We are dead men. None of us will escape. And he begins to cry. And now all of the men on board start crying. I mean, oh my God, these bitches. Like, are you about it or not? You know what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like this is not it, but whatever. So the king naturally is like, what is happening? What is our fate? Like, what does this mean? And so the ship captain explains that based on how long they've been off course, that they are headed towards an island of black stone known as Magnetic Mountain. Oh, this gives me chills. So basically, the currents will force the ship towards this hard rock, and the ship will split into pieces on the sides of the cliffs. And the nails from the ship and all things made out of iron will be drawn out of the ship and stick to the black rock. This is literally a magnetic island. The island has a mysterious magnetic force field that attracts all things of iron to it. Many ships have wrecked there and have left behind nails, swords, artifacts, all kinds of shit. And the shore is on the shore of this island is this alleged building. There is a dome of brass set on 10 columns. And on the top of this dome, there is known to be a rider on a horse, also made of brass. Allegedly, the story goes that the rider holds a brass lance in one hand, and on his chest there is a tablet inscribed with names and talisman. Like, what the fuck is this island? Oopsies, that was my speaker. Whoopsie daisies, I left my speaker on. Okay, so literally, are you hearing this? Is there a fucking cow outside? I don't know if you hear it, but I swear there's a cow outside. I've never heard a cow. But that's amazing. Okay, so literally they're headed towards this mythical magnetic mountain where there is said to be a brass dome with a brass statue of a rider with some kind of magical inscription tablet full of spells and talisman on top of a horse, which is, I mean, this is like so like ominous but also like incredible. So it is said, the legend goes, that the rider is known to kill everyone who comes his way, and legend has it that unless the rider is knocked from his horse, you will be sure to die. All the men on the ship began to say their goodbyes to each other. I mean, they're literally just like ready to die. And they literally stay up all night thinking of their impending doom. What's weird though, and like maybe I'm being silly here because maybe the current is in fact too strong, and I get that these are sailboats, but like I'm sure they have rowboats. Like, is it not worth just trying to evacuate in the rowboats and to like paddle away? There are the peppers like clockwork. There are the motherfucking peppers. Every time. Peppers! Okay, give me 1 second. And we're back, and we're live. Back in Pepper headquarters. It's crazy. Those peppers are like clockwork. Okay, but hear me out. What I was really getting at is that, like, would it not be worth just trying to paddle away? You know, like, I get it, but also, like, I feel like these men aren't really trying. I don't think they're, like, really putting their all into it. You know what I'm saying? I think they're kind of giving up really early. But alas, the men stay up all night. They are restless. They are afraid. They just know that they're going to fucking die. And so sure enough, the next morning rolls around. They wake up and they find themselves very close to the Black Mountain. and the current is pulling them faster and faster, and eventually they get close to the cliffs. The ships hit the cliffs. They split into pieces, and all of the iron nails and things on the boat float out and attach themselves to the side of the black island. By that afternoon, most of the men had drowned in the water, but a few had survived, clinging to pieces of wood floating around in the water. And eventually the young king was blown ashore by the winds, clinging to a plank of wood. And here on the shore of the island, he found himself directly under an old, rugged staircase carved into the mountain, leading to the summit. Oh God, this is so good. So, of course, with nowhere to go except the vast sea behind him, he decides to climb up this staircase carved into the rock. He praises Allah, and gripping to the sides of the rock, he begins his ascent. Once he reaches the summit, the path led him to the Great Dome, a dome made of brass, and above it was a brass rider on a horse, holding a lance in one hand with a lead tablet on his chest with talisman and decrees. Like, are you fucking kidding me? So the young king enters the dome and he performs wudu, which is how you prepare yourself for your daily prayer. So he washes his face, he washes his arms. Oops. I'm speaking with my hands right now. He washes his face, he washes his arms, his head, and his feet before prayer. And then he recites a prayer in gratitude for Allah and for sparing his life. After this, the young king fell asleep under the dome. And that's literally a fucking cow. Can you hear that? Dude, my neighborhood is wild, dude. There's a whole fucking cow right now. Is it walking around? I have no idea. The peppers aren't happy. I don't know. So the peppers that I speak of they're my neighbors, but these are the neighbors that I can see. They're on the other side of my backyard. So they're not on my same street, if that makes sense. But I would love to get the peppers on the podcast, you know? I would love to have them as guest speakers. That would be amazing. Okay, so where are we? The king is underneath this brass dome. He falls asleep. And in his dreams, he hears a voice tell him to dig beneath his feet, where he will find a bow of brass with 3 arrows made of lead, inscribed with talismans. The voice tells him to take the bow and arrow and to shoot the brass statue in order to knock the rider off the top of the dome, and this will rescue many people from great distress. The voice also explains that after he shoots the rider from the top of the dome, that it will fall into the sea, and after that, the bow and arrow will drop to his feet. He then should take the bow and bury it where he once found it. Then the sea will swell higher and higher until it becomes level with the top of the dome. Then a small boat will appear, and in this boat will be a man of brass, but not the horseman. And the king should enter the boat, but not utter the name of Allah, and this brass man will row him for 10 days and bring him to the sea of safety, where he will find someone to take him back to his land. But it is crucial, it is imperative that the young king never utter the name of God. So, when the young king awakes from his slumber, he begins his task immediately. He starts digging under his feet, and sure enough, he finds a brass bow with lead arrows with talisman. He gets up and he shoots the horseman off of the dome into the sea. The bow drops and he buries it. The sea begins to rise higher and higher. And once the sea is level with the dome, a little boat appears on the horizon. And as it becomes closer, the king calls down the praises of Almighty Allah. And then as the boat approaches, he sees that there's a brass man who has a lead tablet on his chest inscribed with names and talisman. The young king boards the ship silently, and the bronze man rows for days and for days. And finally, after 10 days, they arrive at the islands safely. And without being able to motherfucking control himself, the young king says, "There is no God but Allah, Allahu Akbar." And literally, the second he says that, the boat capsizes and sends the king into the sea. Literally, like, come the fuck on right now. Like, can you not listen to fucking, what's the word? Directions? Like, come on, dude. I get it. Like, if you're used to, like, saying prayers a lot, like, you might not, like, be able to control yourself, but this is a supernatural situation. And you literally had a dream that told you to do this esoteric shit. Like, listen to the fucking directions, dude. Like, he's literally fucking blowing it. But here we are. So now the young king is in the sea. The ship sinks, the brass man sinks. He is all alone, and he is treading water all fucking day. He treads water all fucking day. And as night creeps in, he grows exhausted. I mean, naturally. He says a prayer to Allah and he starts to prepare to die. And right after he says his prayer, a giant wave sweeps him up and carries him to the shore of an island. Here he stands up, he takes off his clothes, he wrings them out, and he spreads them out to dry. And he lays down to sleep. The next morning he dresses and he begins to explore the island. Very quickly, he found himself in a small valley. And after a short walk, he realizes that this is a teeny tiny island in the middle of the sea. There is nowhere to go, nowhere to run. And at this, the young king grows very sad. He feels doomed. He feels alone. He feels like he's fucked it up. I mean, in a sense, he kind of has. However, as he looks into the distance, he sees a ship approaching the island. The king immediately climbs into a tree to hide and to watch as they come ashore. Off the ship came 10 African slaves carrying spades. And now, I just want to remind you, pause for a second, just want to remind you that, like, colorism has existed for thousands of years. Colorism is nothing new. And here we are hearing stories that are literally thousands of years old that are still imploring and using slaves with darker skin color. Okay, so these slaves get off the ship, each carrying a spade, and they walk to the center of the island, and they dig until they uncover a trap door. There they open it, and then they return to the ship and they come back carrying breads, flour, butter, honey, sheep, utensils, like all of this ornate things, food, fabrics. The slaves made many trips carrying all of these decadent goods down into this trapdoor. And finally, on the last trip, they bring with them, dressed in the finest clothes, a very old man, almost a skeleton, wearing a tattered blue robe. And with him, the old man is holding the hand of a younger man, a young boy, also dressed in decadent clothes and with smooth, youthful skin. The king remarked at the beauty of this boy, okay? This was a beautiful boy. The poets who tell the story make it clear that beauty itself had never seen a boy this beautiful, okay? It's giving boy band, okay? It's giving hot boy, okay? This boy is young, he is beautiful. That is all we need to know. So the old man and the boy, who are holding hands, walk down into the trapdoor, and they remain there for an hour. Afterwards, the old man emerges from the trapdoor, and he and the slaves cover the trapdoor with sand. They return to the ship and they sail away. However, the beautiful young boy never emerges from the trapdoor. He's down there. So after the ship sails out of sight, the young king climbs out of the tree and he begins to dig up the trapdoor. Like, what the fuck is going on? He lifts up the trapdoor, and below it he sees a vaulted stone staircase. Also, pause. Have you noticed that all three dervishes have a story about a staircase leading into the ground? Like, super interesting. Okay, so the king finds this staircase, and he climbs down to the bottom and finds an incredibly beautiful chamber filled with rugs and silks. The beautiful boy is sitting on a little throne, holding a fan in one hand, honestly serving. If I was to make a movie out of this, I would cast Julio Torres as this boy, because this is cunty. Okay, so immediately, obviously, this young boy turns pale at the sight of this man, this intruder. He's obviously shook. And the king assures him, he says, "I am human, I will not hurt you. And it was fate that brought me here. This is a magical occurrence." And the young king asks the boy why on earth he's down here on this tiny island underground. So the boy explains that his father was a wealthy merchant jeweler, and that his father had been trading for many years far and wide by sea, using slaves, camels, ships, and over the years he had amassed a great wealth. But never had he had a child, and never once had he thought about having a child. But one day, the merchant dreamt that he would have a son. But in this dream, his son had a very short life. And he woke up from his dream in tears. And the next day, his wife had become pregnant. Very soon, the beautiful boy was born, and the old merchant rejoiced at this gift so late in life that he could be a father. But very quickly, the merchant grew nervous, and so he summoned astrologers, astronomers, and sages to predict the life of the boy. They told his father that this young boy would live for 15 years, after which he would face a great danger. But if he happens to survive, he will live a long life. They explained that the cause of the boy's death would be very specific, that in the Sea of Destruction is a magnetic mountain. On top of it sits a brass dome, on top of which sits a horse of brass with a rider, on whose chest is a lead tablet with names and talisman. The boy will die 50 days after the rider falls off the horse into the sea. The boy will be killed by a man who shoots the rider. This man will be named Ajib ibn Kabit. And this happens to be the name of our young king. What the fuck? Okay, so obviously the old merchant is fucking stressed. This story freaks him out. He raises the boy in safety and in opulence. But the day that the boy turns 15, his father starts freaking out. So just 11 days ago, the old merchant hears that the brass rider from Magnetic Mountain had fallen into the sea and had been shot by none other than a man known as Ajib, son of King Kadib. So the merchant took his beautiful son to this tiny remote island to hide him away from the rest of the world and to protect him from his death. Like, holy fucking shit. So the young king listens to this and he thinks to himself silently, that's my name. And I shot the brass rider, but I would never kill this beautiful young boy. Like, what? That's so, like, they must have gotten this prediction wrong. So at this, he says aloud to the boy, may Allah protect you from disease and destruction. He says, I will sit with you and I will serve you. And after these 50 days pass, I shall make my way back to my land and perhaps, if you allow, borrow some of your men to accompany back to my kingdom. And so the boy agrees. That night they lit the lamps, they ate sweet meats and fruits, and they talked. And the next morning, the young king waited on the boy. He washed his face with hot water. He prepared them meals. And at this, the boy promised to reward the young king. And so he said, as long as Ajib ibn Khabid doesn't kill me, I will make sure that you are rewarded for your good deeds. And so the young king just keeps his mouth shut. He doesn't say that that's his name. He keeps it on the DL, and he just keeps telling himself that, like, nothing could go wrong, right? Like, red fucking flag, dude. Why are you hanging out with this kid? I feel like if you hear that prophecy, the answer is to, like, get out of Dodge, right? Okay, whatever. So then after they had their morning bath, they ate more beautiful foods. They burned perfumed incense, and they began to play draughts, which is basically like the OG version of checkers. It's like Persian checkers. So they carried on like this for a few days. Also, pause. Where are they pooping? Like, am I the only one thinking that? I need to know. Okay. So after a few days of just living in kind of like the best situation, they're eating, they're chilling, they're playing checkers. And so, sorry. I lost myself in my notes. After a few days, our young king just keeps thinking to himself, like, the astrologers really must have fucked this up. Like, I actually like this kid a lot. Like, I love him. Like, this is so weird. Like, I would never murder him. So the days keep passing, and the king continues to serve the boy. And they literally just chilled for 39 days. But on the 40th day, the youth woke up in the best mood, because this would mark 50 days after the brass horseman had followed, the alleged day of his death. So the boy thanks the young king for his kindness and for keeping him safe, and he blesses him. And then he says, will you please heat up some water for me to take a bath? The boy has a lavish bath, and the young king bathes him and cleans him, and he dresses him in fresh clothes. After the bath, the boy asks for fresh melon juice sweetened with sugar. So the king obliges. He starts prepping the melon for the melon juice, but he realizes that he doesn't have a knife. And so he asks the boy if he happens to have one. The boy says, yes, of course. There's a knife sitting on the high shelf above my head. We all know where this is going. The king reaches for the knife on the top shelf, and he takes it down and takes it out of its sheath, but then trips and falls directly over the boy and accidentally pierces the knife directly through his heart. And this is the PSA of knife safety, people. If you are taking a fucking knife off of the top shelf and there is a person under it, you either ask them to move or don't fucking unsheath it. Like, what are you smoking, dude? I mean, also an important thing to remember is that this guy's a king. Like, he actually is brand fucking new. He doesn't know shit about shit. This is just so reckless. Also, this is like the prophetic day that you're gonna kill him. Like, this is just not how we do things. Okay. So of course, as the knife goes directly through this boy's heart, the boy is dead in seconds. The young king falls to his knees and he lets out a loud cry. He hits his head on the ground. He tears his clothes. And very quickly he realizes he needs to get the fuck out of there. So he runs out the stairs, he recovers the trapdoor, and he sees on the horizon the ship returning. And he knew that he was fucked. So he ran into the tree and climbed in it to hide. And just as he settled, the slaves got off the ship with the old merchant, and they walk to the trapdoor. They uncover it and open it, and they enter the hidden chamber. At the sight of his son, the merchant faints, and the slaves carry him back out into the sunlight, and they start to fan him. Finally, when the merchant arises, he cries, he pulls out his beard, and he loses his shit at the sight of his dead son. At this point, the slaves had carried up the body of the boy and they had laid him out on a fabric on the sand. And of course, the young king is watching all of this from above in total sadness. He really fucked up. He fudged the bucket. And the merchant fainted again. And that night, the merchant awoke one last time to see the corpse of his son. He recited a long poem of love and sadness to his son's body, and with a deep sigh, his soul left his body with one breath, and he collapsed into the hands of his slaves. The slaves carried the body back onto the ship, and they sailed out of sight. The young king remained on the island for 1 month, spending his days wandering the small island and at night sleeping in the chamber below and eating the rest of the food provisions. As the month passed, he noticed that the sea to the west of the island was growing more and more shallow as he could start to see the ocean floor. And at the end of the month, he decided that it was shallow enough for him to leave and to wade through the waters to the mainland. And so he did so. He got in the water and he waded in waist deep and walked for miles and miles towards the mainland, a land that was covered in great sand dunes. The sand dunes spanned forever, and that had camels wandering that were sinking into their hocks. And the king, at great effort, crossed the dunes, and in the distance, to his relief, he saw a fire burning brightly. And so he started to head towards this fire, hoping to find safety and relief. But as he grew near, he realized that it was actually a giant palace with a door made of brass, and the brass shone and glimmered in the sun, almost like a burning fire. So, when the king came up on the palace, he was so in awe of the beauty of the door that he sat directly across from it just to stare at it. And soon after he sat down, 10 young men appeared, wearing incredible clothes, and with them was an older man. All of the men were missing their right eyes. Red fucking flag. This is a total red fucking flag. This is a cult, bro. Like, you need to get the fuck out of there. Okay, so the 11 men missing their right eye greet the young king, and they ask him who he is and what his story was. He told them of the crazy turn of events that he had been going through for the last couple of months and how he ended up like in this wild land. And the men were astonished to hear his story. They pitied him. A couple shed tears. And so they brought him into their palace. In the main halls were 10 couches, each covered with a blue fabric. And in the middle of the space was a smaller couch that was also covered in the same blue material. Each of the young men went to his own couch, and the older man went to the small couch in the center. The old man told the young king to sit down, but he was very clear not to ask him or the young men about why they were there and how they had missed their right eye. Or I guess how they had lost their right eye. I mean, we all know that this guy does not have the ability to restrain himself. He's literally in the same situation right now with these 3 women. So we already know that, like, he's gonna fucking break this rule and he's gonna fucking ask, but literally, like, whatever. Okay, so after this, the old man gets up and he brings out food. He brings out beverages, and he brings out food for the young king as well. And they spend the rest of the night chatting, and the men were very interested in the young king's stories. They asked him a whole bunch of questions. And after a few hours, and as the night continued, the younger men addressed the older man, and they asked him to bring them their dues. I mean, this is a red flag. I would get the fuck out of there. Okay, so the older man gets up and he goes to a closet, and with him he brings back 10 trays on his head, each covered in the same blue material, and he hands 1 tray to each man. Then he lights 10 candles, and he puts 1 candle on each tray, and he removes the blue covering to reveal that each tray is covered in ash and cooking pot grime. Then all of the young men start sobbing. They start smearing their faces with this fucking grime and slapping themselves, tearing their clothes and beating their chest. And they keep repeating over and over and over, "We were seated at our ease, but our inquisitiveness did not leave us." And they just say this all night fucking long. This is a total red flag. So before daybreak, the old man heats up water for them to wash their faces. He collects the trays, he gives them their hot water, and the men begin to bathe themselves, and they get dressed in fresh clothes. So now the idiot young king just cannot stop thinking about it. He needs to know what the fuck happened and why they're all missing their right eyes. But also, like, let's return back to what they were saying. They were literally saying, "We were seated at our ease, but our inquisitiveness did not leave us." Like, is that not a warning or what? Like, keep your mouth fucking shut, dude. So the young king has no chill. And so he's like, "You guys have to tell me. I literally need to know how, like, what the fuck is going on here." But the men warned him. They reminded him, like, do not let your youth and your curiosity to get the best of you. Like, let it be. And at this, all the men got up, they returned to their couches, and the old man brought out food for everyone to eat. They chatted, they drank, and at nightfall, they had their dinner, and again, the same ordeal began. The old man brought out all the trays, he lit the candles, and the men fucking smeared all this grime on their face and beat themselves and repeated this mantra. And this went on for a few nights. But after a few nights, the king could not fucking take it, and he begged the men to tell him what the fuck was going on. And they insisted, they told him that it was better to keep this secret hidden. It was best for him not to know. And they warned him that he would end up just like them if he wouldn't stop. But the king couldn't bear it. He had to know. He didn't fucking care. he literally was like, I don't care if I end up to be one of you, I have to know. This guy's fucking brand new, dude. Like, what? No, I don't want to be missing my right eye and covering my face in fucking grime and like beating myself. Like, I'm cool, dude. It's time to leave. Like, what the fuck? This guy's fucking brand fucking new. Okay, so alas, the men say, okay, like, you're asking for it. So the men get a ram and they slaughter it. They skin it and they give it to the young king. They tell him to wrap himself in the skin holding a knife and to sew himself inside the ram skin. Already, count me fucking out. Already, like, I'm cool. I'm totally cool. They tell him that after he sews himself inside the skin, that a roc, which is literally a giant eagle, these are considered mythical creatures. They are giant eagles, like the sizes of buildings. However, these things did exist. The last one died just like, I think a couple decades ago in New Zealand. There was a giant eagle species in New Zealand. Just throwing that out there. Okay, so anyway, they tell him that once he wraps himself in this ram skin, this giant eagle will swoop down and pick him up, and it will fly him to a mountaintop, and it will drop him there. And there he should cut himself out of the skin. And at the sight of this, the roc will freak out and fly away, and it will leave him there alone on the mountaintop. Then he is to walk half a day until he finds a strange palace. They tell him that in the palace he will find the answer that he so desperately seeks. And the king is like, cool, like, let's do this. Like, what the fuck? Are you insane? Like, I am not wrapping myself in a freshly skinned animal and sewing myself in for a giant bird to pick me up. Like, this is insanity. But the king fucking does it. He wraps himself inside the skin. He sews it closed. This giant roc comes down, swoops him up, and flies him to a mountaintop. He cuts himself out of the skin. The roc flies away, and he begins to walk a half a day until he finds a palace. There he finds 40 girls, beautiful as moons, all breathtaking. The women greet him warmly, and they say that they've been expecting him for 1 month. This is just such a red flag. They seat him at a throne, and they tell him that he will be their new master. Oh my God. The king is juiced because he's an idiot. They bring him food and drink. They set out fresh flowers, fresh fruits, dried fruits, nuts, cakes. They bring out wine, and one of the girls plays a lute while the other women sing. The king drinks more and more wine, and all of his earthly troubles fade away, and he thinks to himself, this is the life. I mean, yeah, it kind of is. The women say that he can take any one of them to his bed for the night. And so he chooses a woman with a beautiful face, dark eyes, black hair, well-spaced teeth, perfect in all aspects, with joining eyebrows like a supple bow or a spit of sweet basil. Astonishing and amazing as the mind. I will say that as dumb as this king is, I am obsessed with his taste in women, and I love that he chose a woman with joining eyebrows. And he's just gained some points in my book. He had a night of beauty with her. She rocked his world. In the morning, they took him to the baths where all the women bathed him, and they gave him lavish clothes. And again, the next day, they brought out incredible food and drinks and wine, and they got wine drunk. The next night, he chose a different lady and spent the night of heavenly pleasure with her. And he spent an entire year living like this, living the high life. And as the next year began, the women told him that he must listen to them closely so that he can save himself. The women began to cry, And they explained that they were all daughters of kings, and that every year they leave for 40 days to visit their kingdoms, and that they worry about the man. They worry that without them there, that he will not do what they tell him, and that he will not follow their instructions. And I think the women are right. I think we can assume that he's not going to follow their instructions, because he doesn't seem to be able to fucking do that. So they give him the keys to the palace. And they explain, there's a bunch of keys on the key ring. They explain that there are 40 rooms in the palace. He may enter 39 of them. However, the 40th room he cannot enter. And if he does enter, he will be forced to leave. As the women leave, the king recites this poem. He says, when she came close to say farewell, she and her heart were allies there to longing and love. She wept like moist pearls, while my tears, as they flowed, were like carnelians forming a necklace on her breast. These poems are beautiful. The king, of course, promises to the women as they leave that he will never open the 40th door. The women cried and cried, because I think deep down they knew that he was a weak little bitch, and they knew he wasn't going to do it. I know that he's not going to do it. So the women fly from the palace, and he is left all alone. On the first evening, he takes the keys and he opens the first room. It was a paradise. There was a garden with trees, ripe fruits, tuneful birds, gushing waters. He walked through the room, marveling in the natural beauty and hearing the songs of the birds. He saw apples of green and red, quinces of gold and shaped like the full moon, apricots like polished rubies. After he left and he locked the door, and the next day he opened the second door. In this room, it was a large space with date palms and a flowing stream carpeted with rose bushes, jasmine, marjoram, eglantine, narcissus, gillyflowers, and there was a breeze that carried the sweet smells, filling the space and filling his heart with great happiness. After exploring the chamber, he left and he locked it. And after he opened the third door, inside he found a hall of colored marble filled with crystals and precious stones. There was bird cages made of sandalwood and aloe wood, filled with songbirds, nightingales, ring doves, blackbirds, turtle doves, and Nubian song thrushes. Here he delighted in their song, and he slept there until morning. And the next day he opened the fourth door, and he found a chamber with 40 closets with open doors. Each closet was filled with treasure of immeasurable beauty and mass. There was pearls, sapphire, topazes, emeralds, gold, just everything that you could imagine. And the young king felt that he was the wealthiest king in the world, as he had a palace full of jewels and treasures and beauty, and also the most beautiful 40 women in the world. The hubris, the fucking hubris of this man. So as the 39 days continued, he wandered from room to room and spent the day in each of these chambers, each one more lavish than the next, encrusted with jewels and fruits and birds and plants. And finally, after 39 days, he had opened 39 chambers, all chambers except the last, the 40th, the forbidden. And he could not stop thinking about it. He had to know, because he was a fucking idiot. Like, literally, what the fuck are you thinking? Okay, so here we are. It's the 40th day. There's one more day until all of these beautiful women return. And he takes the keys and he opens the 40th door. Inside, there was a fragrance of something that he had never smelled before, and it was so overpowering that he fainted for an hour. After, he gets up and he ventures further into the room. The floor was covered in saffron, and there was 2 lamps of gold candles diffused with the scent of musk and ambergris. Ambergris is basically like whale blubber. There was 2 giant incense burners filled with aloe wood, ambergris, and honey perfume. There was a horse that was as black as night. In front of it was a manger of clear crystal filled with husked sesame. Call back our girl Husk Sesame. Next to it was another manger filled with rose water scented with musk. The horse was harnessed and bridled with a saddle of red gold. Of course, our little friend here could not fucking control himself, so he took the horse and he mounted it. The horse did not budge, so he kicked it. And again, it would not move, so he picked up a whip and he whipped the horse. At this, the horse flew back onto its hind legs. It neighed with the sounds of rumbling thunder, and with that, it opened a giant pair of black wings, and the horse flew off into the sky, carrying the young king. It flew higher and higher, and finally, as it descended, it dropped the king on a flat roof. Its wings slapped him across the face, and the edge of the wing struck out his right eye, and it slid down his cheek. This little bitch. He climbs off the roof and finds himself right back where he started, with the 10 young men missing their right eyes along with the old man. The king laments and he cries, and he asks them to give him a tray of grime so that he can rub it on his face and beat himself. And the young men yell at him. They tell him he's a fucking idiot and that he's not welcome there, and they drive him out. I mean, like, literally, dude, what do you fucking expect? What? So now the king has nothing left. He's missing his right eye. He has nowhere to go. And he thinks to himself, I was resting at my ease, but my inquisitiveness would not leave me. So he shaves his beard and he begins to wander the land lonely, until one day, after many moons, he found himself in Baghdad. There in the evening, he found 2 men standing in the street, also with no beards and with no right eye. He walked up to them and introduced himself as a stranger. And together, the 3 of them walked through the streets in search of a safe place to spend the night. At this, the 3rd dervish told the beautiful sister that this was his story. And so the beautiful woman told him that he was free to go, but he begged to stay to hear the story of the remaining men. Obviously now, the only 2 remaining men are the caliph and his vizier, Jafar. So the lady turns to them, and Jafar, the vizier, tells the same lie that they told at the door. They say that they are merchants from a foreign city, that they came to Baghdad on business, and they stayed out late exploring the city, and it was too late to return to their khan. So with this, the 3 sisters were satisfied, and they dismissed all of the men into the street. At this, I'm sorry, like, these men are so crazy. They are so dumb. So now all these men are in the street, and the caliph asks the 3 dervishes if they have anywhere to go. And obviously they don't. That's why they were at these women's houses. So he instructs Jafar to take them, to give them a place to sleep, and in the morning to bring them to him so that he can have these stories written down. So Jafar takes the 3 dervishes, and the caliph returns to the palace, where he stays up all night. He cannot stop thinking about these women. So in the morning, he gets to his little palace court, and he summons Jafar. He tells him to bring the 3 dervishes, bring the 3 ladies, and to bring the 2 black dogs. Once they all enter the court, Jafar explains to the 3 beautiful women that they will be pardoned for their previous kindness, but also that the men that they had guessed were not who they said they were. They were, in fact, the vizier and the caliph himself, Harun al-Rashid. And at this, Jafar demands of the women that they tell them their story. And at this, the eldest sister, the most beautiful sister, stepped forward and began to tell her story. That is the story of the 3rd dervish. And on the next episode, we will hear the story of the beautiful sisters. Isn't that so good? It's so fucking good. It's so fucking good. I know. It's crazy. If you liked this episode, please subscribe my podcast. Please write a review. If you want to support me on my birthday, you can write an email in. You could go and check out our merch, which is in the description notes. Get a fucking Dr. Pepper shirt. Get an Esoterica and Nonsense shirt. Or just do a random act of kindness for a stranger. I really do believe that if we all take accountability and choose kindness, we can change the world. But here I am on my little soapbox. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have the most beautiful day. I hope you have the most beautiful life. Until next time, over and out.